You are listening to the APSE podcast, the Association of People Supporting Employment First, with your host, Chris Davies.
Okay, welcome everyone to the Minnesota APSE podcast. As you can see, we are live and in person, and I couldn't be more excited to be doing that today, especially with my good friend and sort of my partner in employment, increasing employment for people with disabilities. Mr. Bob Wagner is here with us today. Say hi, Bob.
Hey, everybody.
All right, and we're coming live on location in downtown St. Paul. Here we go. So, as you know, those of you that have been following the Minnesota APSE podcast over the last year and a half, we like to invite a variety of different guests in to tell their stories and also share their insights on employment for people with disabilities. And for anyone that is turning in for the first time, first and foremost, welcome. And for anyone that has never heard of APSE before, we are especially glad you're watching here today. I always like to start out, this podcast by talking a little bit about APSE and Minnesota APSE and reading to you our purpose statement so you know what we're all about. APSE is the only national organization of its kind that solely believes, advocates for integrated, competitive employment for all people. And we have had a Minnesota chapter basically since APSE started. And in Minnesota, we see ourselves as an action-oriented organization, and we exist to bring people together, to raise expectations so that people with disabilities can be employed, contribute, and assume their roles and responsibilities as citizens in their communities. At Minnesota APSE, we believe that employment is the same wages, standards, responsibilities, expectations, and opportunities available to any working age adult. And I know our guest here today believes that as well, that one person at a time, employment is indeed the avenue out of poverty and isolation. So let's move into it, shall we? You ready, Bob?
All right. This morning I was thinking I want to offer, before I introduce myself, two possible sources of inspiration and challenge. 31 years ago, ADA was passed, and we made great progress in education, transportation, access to public buildings. But employment has remained stubbornly low. So you have the opportunity not only to to change people's lives, but also transform the culture that we live in and bend that moral arc of the universe. Secondly, I want to share a wonderful quote by Virginia Satir. She was asked how she would measure her success. And her answer was, and I quote, "I measure my success by what I did for others, and did I use all the gifts given to me?" Well, I'm here to challenge you to use all the gifts given to you. I don't really enjoy public speaking. It's not a very comfortable place for me. I'm here because I want to use all the gifts given to me. And I suspect you're here for the same reason. So without further ado, I'll give you a brief introduction of myself. I'm a psychologist with 35 plus years across many addictions, mental health, many disabilities, mental health, addictions, and disability services. From 2000 to 2016, I was a supervisor and one-time interim manager at Ramsey County Disability Services. I'm also on a CADI waiver. Medical assistants and PCAs make my life work. Because on December 26, 2004, the day of the tsunami that devastated Indonesia, I was body surfing off the coast of Puerto Vallarta. The surf was rough and the waves were high. However, as my wife Jenny would tell you, I'm always a little bit of a risk taker, and I wanted to measure my skills. I knew right away they were beyond me, and I knew I needed to get to the shore, but one last wave caught me before I got there. When that wave hit, I knew instantly that my body couldn't save me. held my breath, and yelled when I surfaced. That last wave changed my life instantly and forever. But I got a little bit of luck there. There was one person on the beach that stormy day. One person I had watched. He never got in the water the whole week until that wave hit me. He knew that I was in trouble. I had watched his 3 little girls, probably ages 5 to 11, the entire week. They were out there boogie boarding, and the youngest one, little redhead, would get tipped over, and she'd come up sputtering for her dad, and I'd give him the thumbs up that she was just fine. Dr. Bill Smith saved my life that day. He knew I was in trouble. He came out and secured my neck and had him brought me to shore. My neck was broken, and my spinal cord is severely damaged. My heart stopped a couple times, so I have mild brain injury. One of his daughters found my wife, and I motioned her to come close. I said, "Honey, I can't feel my legs, and I need you to be strong." She's been that and more every day. I'm not here today without her. She's been a rock every night. She's up once or twice to help me out with my cares. In a moment, I had gone from a fully independent and very physically active 49-year-old to someone who needs others to dress, bathe me, and help me with my other bodily functions. I spent the next 22 months away from home. In the hospital first, I was in ICU, I think, 12 times, 13 times. I nearly died a couple times. And after 4 months in the hospital, I went to Courage Center, Rehab Center, for another 18 months. There we go. While I was still paralyzed, in my second month, Chris, I met with vocational rehab services and told the counselor that my dream was really to work and walk again. The walking hasn't panned out. Chris was enthusiastic, and she believed in me. She said, "We'll find a way." But the reality was, I didn't know how or how much I could work again. It took me 23 months to go back to work. It took me another 2 years to return full-time to work. I was overwhelmed, scared, and scarred by low self-esteem. My determination was only slightly bigger than my fear and self-doubt. Going back to work was overwhelming, but I'm here to tell you that my worst day working has been better than not knowing whether I'd work again. Going back to work helped me believe that my injuries no longer defined me. No, we're good right there. Let's see. Where am I? My manager, Andrea Zuber, saw my disability experiences bringing value when my self-esteem was at its lowest. When I saw my spinal cord injury as deficit, she saw it as gift. I'm here today because people believed I could work. That's why I'm here today. Words can't really capture what going back to work meant to me. I could use my gifts. I could contribute and help pay the bills and make a difference, make a living. Second only to coming home to my wife, Jen, going back to work felt like I was getting my life back. I felt a profound responsibility to that Pacific wave. I could give voice for people with disabilities wanting to be full community members. It's likely my spinal cord injury brought more value to my work than everything else I had learned. It enhanced all of my gifts. In knowledge, the price was high, but the lived experience gave me a hard-won authenticity. Damn, I miss exercise, and I miss being able to dress myself and use the toilet, right? The injury took much, but it gave more. Over time, the loss became gift. But this isn't just my story. It's a story of most people with disabilities. I know the fear and self-doubt of whether I'd be able to live a regular life, and especially whether I'd be able to work. I know institutional care. Being told I had a 6:30 bedtime when I was 50 because it fit their staffing pattern. For the record, that never happened. I know what it's like to be served by large public institutions, bureaucracy, government paperwork. Yeah, thanks, Chris. I know the weekly experience of being treated as a client, as a patient, but most importantly, though, I know that it's possible to live and work in the community, and all people have those same dreams and possibilities. I know the work pace, as well as the pace of change, challenges all of us. But if you're waiting to live and work in the community, I'm sure it seems awfully slow. My story is a normal human story, because disability is a normal human experience. One might be born with a disability, acquire it prior to their senior years. But if you're lucky to live long enough, nearly everyone here will experience disability. My desire to return home, my need to work is a desire nearly every person with disabilities shares. I've done a presentation that I try to distill down and for today with county case managers, and they say, yeah, that's Bob Wagner. He's not typical, though. And certainly there's truth that I had advantages that most do not. I had an advanced degree and a licensure. But here's what nearly universal. I was fearful. I doubted my ability to work. And Andrea's and Chris's belief in me made all the difference. My wife's belief in me made all the difference. I was a professional from inside the system, so I knew my way around. And if they made a difference for me, think how important you are to the average individual who's largely dependent on you. Your energy, your beliefs, and finding a way makes a difference between somebody using their gifts, being included or not.
Yeah, Bob, I've known you a long time, as you know. And I've heard you tell your personal story before at conferences, at larger team meetings. But sitting next to you in this close environment and having you tell your story to our audience and to me once again moved me in a way I've never been moved before. And I think anybody out there watching can see why we were so excited to meet with you today. That Bob really, not just his story, but his spirit really embodies all the things we're trying to accomplish, as an organization. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. And I know that you also have a real vested interest in the big picture, employment for people with disabilities. We would love to hear, some of your thoughts and insights on the current landscape and where we go.
Thanks, Chris.
And thanks again, Bob, for sharing your story. I had asked Bob to talk a little bit about, the history of employment for people with disabilities. And I just want to ask you, Bob, in your own words, why haven't we fulfilled the promise of the ADA?
Boy, there's no simple answer to that, but for me to answer that question, I always have to start with that ideas create our history. I saw a wonderful quote about 30 years ago, and I always remember, but it says, watch your thoughts, for your thoughts become your actions. Watch your actions, because your actions become your habits. Watch your habits, because your habits become your character, and watch your character, because it becomes your destiny. So, as a psychologist, ideas underpin everything we do ultimately. We inherit, so let me talk about a foundation, and then I'll segue into employment and how that happened. So we inherit our ideas from our parents, our peers, and the culture around us without even knowing it, okay? And those ideas create our personal and collective history. Let's start with some American ideas, okay? I think this probably will resonate with most people. One of the foundational ideas about America is that white people were superior, and black people were not only inferior, but subhuman, okay? That's, 2 million Africans died on the way to be sold as commodities. Those black lives didn't matter. Over 6,500 black people were lynched, and I've read the history. I can't find one person charged with a crime for that. Those blacks' lives that matter. those ideas, so ideas don't just disappear. And they're in our culture, and we inherit them and make them part of who we are without even knowing it. Here's the best example, and then I'll move into disability unemployment. In 1940, so now I'll move from, founding of our country in the 1800s to the early 1900s to 1940, a husband and wife team did what's called the black and white doll study. And they had a cohort of 5-year-old black and white girls. And they showed them a white doll and a black doll. And they said, well, which one's nicer? Which one's prettier? Which one's smarter? Which one do you like? Nearly universally, they all liked the white doll. They were 5 years old, okay? They had learned from the culture around them. In 2009, that study was replicated, first year of President Obama's administration. And the black girls, little 5-year-old black girls, still chose the white doll as better, prettier, smarter. In other words, as superior. Ideas don't disappear. They either evolve or devolve. William Faulkner has a great quote. He said, the past isn't dead. It's not even in the past. Okay? So with that example and quote in mind, how is it that 80% of people with disabilities and caseloads are unemployed? In my reading of history, as America left the farm and moved for jobs to the cities, assembly line work became the norm, right, Chris?
Yep, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Henry Ford. On the farm, people with disabilities in small communities typically found a way to have people do what they were included and they were capable. People kind of own the people in a smaller community. In the city, that doesn't happen nearly as much. We become more anonymous. So assembly line work, if you couldn't keep up on the assembly line, you were unable or disabled. That's really where the disabled term came from. Okay, you were disabled. Hard bigotry over time became the norm, and people with significant disabilities were seen as subhuman. Thanks for turning the page, Chris. Doctors were advising parents that they really couldn't care for their children, and it became routine to send kids with disabilities to large state institutions, and adults were committed to them. And so, here's some examples. Over 13,000 Minnesotans were buried in unmarked or unnumbered graves.
Yeah.
There was no employment, okay? Thousands were given electroshock therapy, lobotomies. Think about that. You can't do that unless you see people as the other, as subhuman. So not so long ago, people with disabilities were seen as so different, they were the other. The other was our primary belief system. They believe, if you can believe people to be subhuman because of their disability, the ideas justified our actions. Boy, I've got some repetition here. Here's a good example. In 1980, Bill Zuber was hired as the new Ramsey County Disability Manager. As part of his orientation, he was sent up to Anoka State Hospital for a tour. And at the end of the tour, he asked the director, does everybody with, he probably used a different term, with intellectual disabilities need feeding tubes? She said, no, we had, what's that called? A strike several months ago. And it was necessary because we didn't have enough staff. And she said, now it's just been convenient. We haven't gotten around to taking them out. So if we see individuals with significant disabilities, it's okay to lock them up and forget them, bury them in unmarked graves, and deny them civil rights and stick feeding tubes down their throats because it's more convenient and efficient. So that's kind of the foundation. That hard bigotry didn't disappear, but it did evolve. In 40-some years, so what I want to suggest is 40-some years, our country doesn't go from locking people up for life with no rights to treating them as capable, seeing them as capable.
Think about that, 40 7 years.
Yeah.
Not very long.
Yeah, 41 years, actually,
Yeah,
19,
yeah.
as capable full citizens, more than
Right,
no
even
more
shorter.
than racism or sexism have disappeared, right?
Absolutely.
So I maintain that the other paradigm, seeing people with disabilities as subhuman, has evolved into the soft bigotry of low expectations. So I'm getting us closer to, the soft bigotry
Sure.
of low expectations is the current dominant paradigm, and it lives in all of us. Okay, I want to suggest that. So current employment, 80% unemployment. So how did it evolve? So as we deinstitutionalized, starting because the Medicaid waiver was passed in 1981, we started bringing people back to the community in America. We resegregated people into large day programs. Certainly an improvement over warehousing them in large state institutions, but it was based on an idea. It was based on a readiness idea. We'll get them ready to work,
Right.
and then they'll go to work. But unfortunately, you don't learn to swim on the side of a pool. All right, you need to do it. At some point, and I can't recall off the top of my head, but the government accounting offices did a large-scale nationwide study in America, and they found that less than 5% ever left those day programs.
Sure.
They never got ready. Okay. And then the other idea. So then supported employment grew up, right? As an idea that so traditional supported employment approaches were also based on soft bigotry. In particular, they assumed that people with intellectual disabilities were only capable of very simple tasks.
Sure.
They assume that the problem is they kind of, and this stuff well, so you can add to this at any point, but they assume not only what people could do, but what they were interested in doing. Again, it was a really low employment rates, but partly it was because they used what I call the front door approach. They had people fill out applications. The thing is, you need to get in front of people to get a job, right? To make a connection. I hired people for over 30 years, and HR always was, I can't think of the right word, but they were giving me who were the most qualified based on their resume. The problem is for the front door approach is that it's a comparative approach.
Right.
And people with significant disabilities, because of their disability, they don't have similar job histories. They don't have similar academic attainment. So they never got in the door.
Yeah.
They never got in front of people.
Yeah. The traditional method of hiring is really built around screening out, not screening in.
Exactly.
And people with disabilities looking for work need to be screened in most of the time.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, my friend.
Yes, sir.
So that's why I would say that approach rarely got people in front of people. That's partly why Discovery has far better access. They use informational meetings to have face-to-face conversations and possible connections. One of, and both of you know this well, Chris, but I had the pleasure of working with you for 2.5 years as the referral coordinator. There you go. There you go. I told you my memory was a problem. And I got the opportunity to meet with parents and individuals who wanted to work. Some were more doubtful than the others, but invariably, I would meet a young man or woman, and you knew that intangible. You knew at the end of the hour that somebody's going to meet this young person or middle-aged person. And they're going to say, "This person wants to work. This person's really interested in what we do. They're likable. I want them to be part of my team, and I'm going to find a way."
Yeah.
And that's what needs to happen, right?
Yeah, making that connection to open that door.
Yeah. So I'm not going to give you any more statistics. What I do want to say, though, is here, leave it. Let me see that yet, though. I can give you lots of statistics, but let's just go back to 20%. Of people in county caseloads in Minnesota are employed, maybe a hair higher at this point. And that's a big statistic, but remember those numbers. There's real people in that 80% who want to work and have enjoyed the workforce. So I'm going to say, where do we go from here? Well, we start by embracing full civil rights, employment first philosophy and approach. We start by seeing the soft bigotry first in ourselves and disability services. So I'm going to end with something from Martin Luther King. He said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. So I'm going to pose this question to you. Are you and your organization helping it bend towards justice? What history are you making? Are you part of the solution or treading water? Because you're either helping the 80% unemployed get a job, or you are part of the problem by enabling the unemployment with your inaction or not improving your skills. It's really that simple. Much like white privilege, you have the privilege of working, okay? Much like white folks need to be allies to people of color, everyone in this audience needs to be an ally to the 80%. I'm confident most of you already are. And I'm just going to end with, you can't be neutral about this problem. In your pivotal roles, you're either engaged in transforming people's lives, or you're enabling unemployment and consequent poverty. There is no middle ground. That's it.
Yeah. So much to unpack and think about there with those words, Bob. I mean, you not only bring a personal perspective to employment for people with disabilities with your personal story and all the things that you faced to get back to working, but you also have a deep understanding of the phenomenon as it is in the history of employment and how we have treated people as less than. And I think one thing you really bring up is that it's a right. It is a right to be able to work. Employment is a right, an inalienable right for human beings, and anyone who has the desire to work should have that opportunity.
We need to find a way.
Exactly.
I mean, some of it's not only the ideas that we've used, but also it's been our lack of imagination.
Right. I was thinking about that actually when you were talking about the 1980s and the traditional, when supported employment became an idea and we started to practice it, or some agencies across the country started to practice it. And originally it was really all about, well, what do we think people can do? And we think people can do this, and that's all they can do. And,
right.
And the processes that you alluded to, the discovering personal genius is a process that Kaposia uses, or a method Kaposia uses from Griffin Hammond and Associates, and are really, they turn that 180 degrees to what does the person want to do. It always needs to start, just like any individual, with that person. What does that person want to do, and the expectation, whether you have a disability or not, starts at birth. Starts with the people that believe in you, make all the difference in the world. So
you follow that person. So I also wanted, I don't speak from a holier than thou perspective. I've had my own soft bigotry, and I'm sure it still lives. And when I was at the county, there's several times I said to, I thought in my mind, I said, this person, they need a DTH, they need a day program. I have to tell you a story about that. I was on a leadership team for Project Search, and Project Search, the long story of it, it's full job immersion for kids in their last year of school instead of going to transition school. And their success rates are actually much like Discovery. About 75% of those young adults end up employed. And I remember somebody interviewing her young woman named Andrea, and I remember doing the interview. We probably got 3 words out of her in 45 minutes. I thought, yeah, she probably needs a day program. And but she had advocates on that leadership team, and they not only voted her in, but they put her in, of all things, a receptionist job. I thought, oh my God, in the first 2 months. So 6 months later, we're doing an information meeting for the following fall, and each kid has their own kiosk with the looping video that tells their story. And I roll over to Andrea and I said, Andrea, the first 2 months here, I couldn't even get eye contact. As I sign in for a monthly meeting. The second 2 months, you would, say my name and, engage with a word or two. And I said, the last 2 months, we've had conversations. And I rolled away, and, she smiled and engaged with me. And rolled away, and I noticed a man watching us. And turns out it was Jim. I said, I correctly assumed he was her dad. And I said, I've been just so impressed with your daughter. And he said, his mother and I thought she would always be like a 5-year-old. And he said, and now we can see her world has changed and many things are possible. And for me, I really chalk it up to the social learning, because instead of being with other 20-year-olds the year round, they were with 50-year-olds and 41-year-olds and 28, with all these advanced social skills. And their soft skills were off the charts. And that's what a job does when you're included. You learn from the people around you. We all do.
Yes.
Yeah. So, anyhow.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's exactly right. I think sometimes people get judged as, oh, well, they can't do anything because we've never seen them do something.
Right.
But have they ever been asked to? Have they ever been expected to? Have they been part of a team that is working towards something? And it's amazing. One of the things. One of the reasons I've stayed involved in this movement and this work for so long and will be probably until I'm,
They push you out the door.
I don't think, exactly, till they push me out the door. I was thinking of something more morbid, so thank you. But what
you're thinking of feet first.
Yeah, what I was the reason I've stayed involved is because of the difference I do see it makes in people's lives. I mean, when they are part of something, when they have literally a reason to get up in the morning. Most of the people that we start working with at our agency might not have worked for 10 years or at least a year or more, and day after day it's the same thing. And then all of a sudden to have a reason and a purpose and a place to go where you're going to be valued and you're going to get value from. I mean, it's a difference maker.
Or they worked at a job that they didn't enjoy at all because they weren't interested in it, and now they have a job where they're excited about it. They know stuff about it. They're It turns them on, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I in that role too as a referral coordinator, I would often, and we'll talk about this in the how to have effective conversations, but I'm jumping ahead just a bit. But parents would be doubtful sometimes, and so I would ask them questions about, what do you do? How'd you get there? I mean, invariably they followed who they were. Okay, invariably they followed who they were naturally into a job, and so to people with disabilities are no different. You have to follow the person.
Sure,
that's what discovery does.
Sure, and that kind of leads me into sort of our final, subject matter, if you will, is kind of like, well, what can we do now? We've talked about where we've been, some of the things that are going on, but what do you see, in your words, needs to be done individually and collectively to really make a difference for employment? During break, Bob and I were talking about conversations, and specifically how you have those conversations with people that don't believe people with disabilities can and should be working in the community. So Bob, can you share with all of us some of your thoughts about how to have effective conversations in that regard?
Absolutely. Or sometimes it's not even that people don't believe, but they're fearful or they have doubts, whether it's the individual or the family members around them. So I think having effective conversations with individuals or guardians who don't believe work is possible is second only second only to believing this person in front of you can work and that you can help make it possible. But I just need to start this with saying everything I tell you about effective conversations, I say this to the professionals, everything I tell you about effective conversation about work starts and ends with the following few sentences. Stop documenting. This isn't another box to check off the appropriate form. Give them your full attention and eye contact. Make a connection. You play a crucial role second only to their guardian. Tell them you believe in them. And you know people who can help them get a job aligned with their skills and interests. Tell them it won't be quick or easy, but it'll be worth the time and the hard work. It all starts there. Stop documenting. Give what you get from a good conversation, full eye contact, like I'm getting from Chris right now. Okay? Stop documenting. You can document it later. So now let me give you some, from my long experience in reading, what I think are some effective tools to use. Now, ambiguity about change is normal. So validate and empathize their ambiguity. Something like, I understand. Change is hard, and it's normal to have mixed feelings about leaving your day program. You have friends there. One side of the individual wants to work. The other side wants to stay with what they know, right? We all understand that, okay? Ambiguity is at the heart of change for all of us. For the parent or guardian, here, don't you turn it too soon, brother. Thank you.
There you go.
For the parent or guardian, part of them wants their son or daughter to work. Another part wants them to stay safe or keep their benefits safe. Think about yourselves. Think about your own history when you thought about making a job or relationship change or moving, even just moving. It's like the inertia. It's like, I'm not happy about this house, but boy, moving, that's hard, okay? And honestly, it's not your responsibility to change people's minds. Instead, help people find their own motivation to change. It's our responsibility to understand their thinking and ask them if they're open to some rethinking. So here's a couple insights from motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing emphasizes listening to two basic types of talk: change talk and sustained talk. Change talk is exactly what it sounds like. I'm tired of sitting at home and I'd like to get a job. Somebody wants to change, okay? Sustained talk is sticking with what they're currently doing. I tried to find a job, but I'd rather stay at the day program. So here's the key point. Give your energy to their openness, the change talk. Don't give much energy to the fear or opposition, that's sustained talk. It's really what you pay attention to. Note it, but the part of them and the part of the parent, the guardian who wants something better for their son or daughter, their family member, the individual wanting a fuller life, give your energy to that, okay? So here's some basic tips for disagreement. Ask open-ended questions. Make sure you understand their reasons for resistance. Agree on something other than the solution. There's always something valid in other people's point, right? Don't argue. Just raises people's defenses. It'll create antibodies for the next conversation. Okay? Till the ground. Plant seeds for the next conversation. If it's somebody you have, for a lot of job developers, you have people coming to you. They're already ready to work, but maybe not the people around them. So, till the ground. Plant the seeds for the next conversation. Tell them about other people's journey to work. Facing their fears. If you hear a good story, use it right away. Okay? Own it. Tell it the same day. Here's a story that I love. It's from a personal friend. We'll call him T. T, like myself, has a spinal cord injury, although I call him one of the lucky ones. It's low, so he can take care of himself. He's not a medical assistant. It's lower. It's in the temporal section. He's an interesting young man. He had a habit of climbing a tree. He had his favorite oak tree that overlooked the Mississippi, but the last time he climbed it, he woke up 3 weeks later in the hospital, of course. Doesn't know what happened, but he was so miserable, which I could relate to, and I'm sure most people can relate to, when they midlife experience a life-changing loss. And he was in PT about 8 or 9 months after his injury. He was just so unhappy. And he heard his PT in these large PT rooms say, he doesn't know if it was to him or to somebody else, but she said, well, you can focus on the 100 things you can't do, or the 1,000 things that you can do. It's your choice. So it rattled around his brain, as he tells me, for a week or two. He decided to focus on the 1,000 things he could do. Although he hasn't given up wanting to walk, right? Yeah. But he's younger than I am. Help the guardian focus on the 1,000 things. Help the family members focus on the 1,000 things. Another tip I like, or technique I use, is ask permission to challenge them. Can I tell you what I see, what I know? I'd like to talk about that more. Are you willing? My go-to, when I use that story, by the way, at Kaposia.
Sure. I remember.
My go-to, can I give you some free advice? And I say, remember, you get what you pay for. So, if you get people to smile, chuckle a little bit, the door opens a little bit. I liked asking parents and guardians questions to help them relate. Have you ever experienced people not believing you could do something? Tell me about a time in your life you were able to display skills because you were in the right situation with the right mentor or coworker. Did you have it all figured out? Tell me about the path to your career. Did you have it all figured out in the beginning? Okay. Let me turn the page here. I got questions I like to use. What about parents or guardians who do not want their family member to work? Parents shut down the ideas as not possible, unrealistic. Again, plant the seeds. Let them know there's a cost. There's a cost to their sons or daughters' ability to use their gifts. The cost is to be included. The cost is the expense of them making money. I sometimes would say to parents, you're choosing predictability over possibility.
Okay. Yeah, I like that, Bob. Yeah.
Predictability over possibility. And there's a creative tension between the two. Okay? And validate how tempting and understandable that it is to do so. Sometimes I would use this quote. I would say, well, it's from John Shedd. He said, a ship is safe in the harbor, but that's not what ships are for.
Right.
Right? A ship is safe in the harbor. So, and sometimes I would just ask imagine questions. Can you imagine they could be safe and could work? Let's try to imagine that, okay? You can disagree by asking questions. Do you remember our last conversation when you talked about working? Remember, you kind of can hold up a mirror to them, that ambiguity about change. You're going to point out an apparent discrepancy. You want her to have more friendships, yet you haven't been willing to help her let her find a job. Can you help me understand that? Because work is where most of us form our social relationships. Yeah, I already did that one. Okay, so guardians and professionals, a lot of times they'll say, well, we tried it and it didn't work. One of the things I encourage people to do is understand that failure is part of their process. Failure is part of the process. A great example is addictions. Relapse is part of the recovery, not the opposite. My son uses this in his practice. He says, especially working with teenagers and families, he says, try, fail, try again, fail better. Okay? It's all about learning. Help them reframe, quote unquote, failure. Reframe them as trying or whatever. I can't think of the word I want to use right now. So you ask, well, what was learned? What didn't work? Most importantly, what did? Okay?
And, if you don't mind me interjecting, I think that's a very natural part of human existence.
Absolutely.
And what I've observed over the years is that people with disabilities are more highly scrutinized and expected to try once and for it to work. And if it doesn't, well, see, we told you so.
Yeah.
Whereas almost all of us have many trials and tribulations on our way to finding a career.
Right.
Have many different jobs, some better, some not as good.
Right. And it's understandable with parents because they want to keep, you and I both know that as parents. I mean, you want to keep your kiddo safe. But we know we have to put them in situations where they're ready where they're going to learn. The only way they're going to learn is to try.
That's right.
Right. But you're so right. I mean, people see the vulnerability first rather than seeing the whole person. The one that yearns to be included, the one that yearns to use their gifts, yearns to, have a job.
Yeah. Make a difference.
Make a difference, exactly. So let me summarize real quick. Give your full attention and quit writing. Be curious. Ask open-ended questions. Prepare and practice for those professionals. None of us fall out of bed knowing how to have a skillful conversation. Observe a coworker who's particularly skillful. 'Cause social learning, as I said earlier, is so powerful. But use what you learn, but be yourself. Be authentic. Be willing to try, fail, and learn from those attempts. I encourage people to role play, make a cheat sheet. This is important. You're helping people change their lives. Validation and empathy. Hold up a mirror. Recognize and give your energy to change talk. I didn't say this earlier, but always pay attention to nonverbals and what people are telling you. Ask them about that.
Sure.
Ask them about, trust yourself to do that. Plant seeds for the next conversation.
Bob, thanks so much for sharing with us your wisdom when it comes to effectively communicating with others. And
doesn't mean I'm good at it. Just,
well, like you said, it's free advice. You get what you pay
that's
for.
Right.
Yeah. Well, so far I feel like I am getting a lot, and I think our audience is too. That's for sure.
You should ask Jenny. She would say, well, he said that, huh?
That's Bob's wife.
Right.
So I know that you want to leave us with some sort of closing thoughts on what we all can do. What is our role out there in the general population, if you will? All
right. Yeah, I want to briefly talk about, for the professionals, people who do this as a business, the difference between transactional versus the transformational aspects of your job, but also to all of you, I want to speak to the transformational role we all play. So, transactional versus transformational, they're not necessarily separate, But a committed relationship is a good illustration. We don't get in a committed relationship to manage a household, right? You enter a relationship for the transformative. To be loved and to love, to share joy and burdens, shared meaning, to have meaning and connection. And the transactions of a household are necessary. But when we settle into the tasks, the transformation, and we've all done it, okay, I'm guilty of it, we're in danger of losing what makes us most alive, what makes the relationship most alive. The relationship goes stale, okay? And stale relationships and boy, I lost something here. Relationship goes stale. Stale food is neither enjoyable nor nutritious. Stale relationship, so too with that. Tragically, if your job is stale, then the people you serve likely have stale job searches too. Transactions are the details of the job, the case notes, staging records, whatever the details of your job. And good transactions can lead to transformational aspects, but use a transaction to make the connection. Don't focus on the transaction. Then you'll understand the individual better. If you're making connections, the relational deal deepening, you'll feel good about what you're doing. Instead, focus on understanding and being empathic. Remember why you got into this business. Okay, I think most people in the audience in this business, they got into this business I've asked this question many times. Only Chris gave me a different answer than I was expecting.
Of course.
But I think we were talking prior to starting this, and I think most people get into this business because they like people. They like working with people. And they wanted to make a difference. And they believed that they could. So for the professionals in this audience as well as parents, you have such an honored role. Just think of your transformational role and power. You're like teachers and parents. Your influence can make a difference for decades, for better or for worse. Believing and loving make a difference. Improving your skills make a difference. A good parent or teacher helps us see potential that we can't see ourselves. Helps us believe in ourselves, especially when we don't believe in ourselves or are fearful, doubtful. Helps us see that our courage is bigger than our fears. Not surprisingly, I believe there's nothing more transformational or satisfying than helping somebody become employed. I know from personal experience that there's nothing more transformational or meaningful than going from unemployment to a job. And I'll always be grateful to Chris McVeigh and Andrea Zuber. Here it is nearly 17 years and I'm still saying their names. Today, I'm speaking to you because Andrea and Chris believed in my gifts, believed in work, and cared about me. And I always have, it's funny, I've been doing parts of this presentation for a long time, and sometimes I haven't mentioned my wife, Jenny. But Jenny was more foundational to either of those other two. Jenny's been the rock. Jenny's always believed in me. So a shout out to my wife, Jenny Wagner. And she's been serving, she's been in special ed for the last 17 years. And wow, she's amazing. So the people you serve long to use the gifts given to them. Remember that Virginia Satir quote? They long to use the gifts given to them. Using the gifts gives them income, which gives them more choices. Using the gifts gives them social connections, self-esteem, and purpose, like you said earlier, Chris. It gives them a bigger life and possibilities so they can pursue their happiness. In the morning, when you look in the mirror, tell yourself, I'm going to work today to make a difference. When things get tough at work, remind each other that you're here to change lives. At least once a week, thank a coworker for making a difference, because that's what it's all about. That's where the joy is. Your life here on earth is short. And in the great scheme of the universe, you're pretty insignificant. We all are. Yet paradoxically, you're incredibly important.
Yeah.
As F. Scott Fitzgerald said, there are all types of love in this world, but never the same love twice. No one can love the people in your personal and professional life like you do. Okay? The life living in you, going back for all time, has never existed and never will again. The transformational interactions you have, those unique moments in the everyday life, unique opportunities to make a difference, they too are one-time events, one-time opportunities, and part of history after they pass. So carve this into your hearts and hold it close. As I see it, your job is to use all the gifts given to you so they can use the gifts given to them. If you do that, not only will they build the life they long for and dream of, you'll tap even greater into your greatness. And you'll be living the life that life longs to live in you. Finally, on behalf of people with disabilities, thank you for your commitment, your service, and wanting to make a difference. And thank you for being an attentive audience. I know none of you multitask during this, but just thank you for being present and wanting to improve your skills and make a difference in the lives of the people that are, whether family members or in your work.
Thank you, Bob. I think there's no doubt that you made a difference here today. And you talked about just how little pieces we are of time. I always like to say that we are just such tiny little specks in the grand scheme of time. Mm-hmm. But for our time, for our specific time, we are mountains, we are boulders. Mm-hmm. And and we can make a difference. And I know I personally feel that I am better for being here today with you, and I know anybody that watched our podcast today will say the same thing. So thank you. Just thank you. Thank you for being my friend, for being an inspiration, and being here with us today to help us with the Minnesota APSI podcast.
You're welcome.
It was a great one.
Can I just say,
Yeah, please do.
this is taking a life-changing loss, and that spinal cord injury, which there's times I still hate, but this gives me meaning to make meaning out of it. The lived experience, like I said earlier, has been invaluable. I couldn't say 90% of this without the injury.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Bob. And again, thank you to our audience for tuning in, for being such loyal Minnesota APSI podcast supporters. And if this was your first time, we hope to see you again soon, because we're going to keep doing this. And finally, I'd just like to remind everybody out there that if you believe it, you can achieve it.